Yeah, it's off.
Yeah, I think so.
Oh no.
Yeah, it's okay.
You guys don't want me to laugh.
Yeah, I know. I know it's okay. Yeah. 단단히 손이 종죽 먹히바 제때 간이라고 제기오레세 단단히 말은 밥신 샤티 온 그래. 다 당아수 김버 그러나 소수 대랑 나무이 공도 계란sol라 주바 남진 아주 뚜딱 돌아나 소수 추시에 그 요땅 몇 약보지 그러나 소소라 따고 그래. 야티르는 심치 섭든 미나라 계란수 하고 요래. 랑근 들와 랑기 마탁나 추비즈기 추문 시에트비 대비실 균도랑근 들와라 딱니 퐁와 야티르는 연세지요아 오다 때리더니 랑그 루당 나당 이트심기 대니 머게와 가렵시 그 요땅 몇 역보치 딱상샤파 맙시나 추비즈기 추문 시에트비 제때 추드그요 바그 죽다고 요래 바꼼바 꼰땅땅 대니 지금 참만 전땅땅 대니 잘락 요땅땅 가래 있나요? 파타나 추드그요 반다고 요래때 원장더니 돈라 추드그 매빠양 요 특그레세 추비즈기 추문이만 보시 그래서 회나 나투 잔라 ndrang ngargir ko goni chud patang tani janlam thakthok ko goni chud par jan kindri ma wod ko ngi chek yin samni thakthok ko goni tani dbyatang tani daman na chok pa yore phatana chud ko yo pala tonla njikten dub ko yo pa te mambo yor ba njikten chugit zete oya tani chig dub ko yo pa tani yong gre eser 대비실 균도랑 컨트롤하라 딱니 폼아 야티르린 세데 두 균도 랑 논트르 가렙숑 것도 추당 멈튼 바 가렙셰도 삼니 텔라 딱상샤파 시니 드니랑 그러니 락비 람라 조야테 베카침보레스 락비 람라 랑 그러니 테 락비 람나 죽고 kh요레 테 만죽나 타머게 마푸나토 드로지 kh요레 तातपे माटे पारे सोवो सेम तंदुर गुरे मातुमो सेम त मांदुर ना सेम छुतंग मांडी पाला लुंगर निगी नाम जुर कारेपसी क्याने छुंगोमा मारे सेरे छुंगोमा त सेम खोरंग गनाला योगु खयोरे 녜바 짱짱 도 누구야 지금 말해 휘식 짱짱 루보건 살 누구야 지금 말해 룽어 그 까체 마네 동시르만 본동 칸 요리 나초 폴라 삼로 떠나 니 그런 마들 땅 가기 그만의 동시르 존이 즉섬 농칸들이 요리 다 옛나양 더니 샘대가 우게와 인문 땡이 봐요 말 디브셔나 샘 마르게나 게와 만나 룽어 끝남기로 까리 돈장나 드크요 말에 세랭아 추바 인동독시나양 드크요 말에 तेना छुपी जुकी छुमन शेख योरे तेना वो इन्ना लुंग कतंगला फास्ताना छुबा yin dong dawo छुबा yinkhul dawo tediris inna sem latana sem durkhme patang sem Nyumo bada mergevi wang to mabu yodni. Authentically do yores. Wena terang atsondi nangla te tutor la jukyo pate thola samno tana. Chu yore patana chu duk yore chu ye tuba tang samba gomba shek yon dok kawore. The yinna yang sem kanangla tamchek kunlong tang samba yakpo menna. Teni chubi zukki chumun fiat yang tekayores. Tepshir oteni rang Turvata Norvala to Takto Tagate Kachimborese, Gati Langanala Sonduga, Deep Sherna Teran Dirni Capso, Natsu, Denima, Rambavento Young, Mikchita, Mimic, Soniki Corni, Maxon Yonkiore, or Teddy.
So we're continuing in this text, the mirror of essential practice instructions for unifying, which is to unify the two accumulations. And as we were exploring this morning earlier, we should always be looking at our mind and seeing, are we blending our mind with the Dharma or not? Are we integrating the Dharma into our thought processes or not? And so looking at ourselves. In the 37 practices of a bodhisattva, it says to continuously, it says, if we do not examine our own confusion, we could appear as a Dharma practitioner, but not be practicing the Dharma. Therefore, to constantly examine one's own confusion is the practice of a bodhisattva. And so when we look at our experience, we observe our body, our speech, and our mind, we should always be examining to see what are we doing, and is it positive or negative. And primarily, though, what is taking place in our mind, because outwardly we could have a capacity to uphold the appearance of a Dharma practitioner. But inwardly, our mind is not blending with the Dharma. So we could wear the robes of a Dharma practitioner. We could hold the mala very nicely. We could have all of the accoutrements and various Dharma items in our homes. And so when someone looks at us or observes us, they might think we're a Dharma practitioner, so we have the appearance of being a Dharma practitioner. But in actuality, we may not be a Dharma practitioner. We could be motivated out of disturbing emotions. We could be engaging in Dharma practice and activities out of pride and our own sense of ego. We could be engaging in Dharma practice out of jealousy, out of comparing ourselves to others and wanting to, look like we're doing more. We could have all kinds of motivating factors in which then outwardly it appears as if we're practicing the Dharma, but in actuality, we're fully immersed in the 8 worldly concerns. And so, as a practitioner, we always want to be examining our own confusion, just as the 37 practices of a bodhisattva said. To always examine our own confusion and mistakes is the practice of a bodhisattva. To always be looking to ensure that we are setting ourselves on a truly holy, positive path, and that we're actually engaging in what we believe in and speak of. Because otherwise, we could find ourselves in a trajectory in which we're actually engaging in all kinds of negative actions motivated out of disturbing emotions. And so ultimately, the sign is, are we taming our own mind? Is the Dharma blending with our mind, because no matter how much we're able to uphold an external appearance, physically and verbally, of a Dharma practitioner, it's not the actions that matter. It's what's taking place in our mind that matters. So we could recite a lot of mantra. We could do, use our speech in those kinds of ways. We can use our body and do prostrations, lots of prostrations. There are some who have accumulated billions of money mantras, but they haven't necessarily tamed their mind. Rinpoche said that reminds me like of my grandmother and some elderly folk. They did at least 1,200,000,000 or 1,300,000,000 mantras, money mantras.
Oh, 12 billions.
Remember, Tungchur is 1 billion.
Journey.
Oh, Tungchur,
12.
no, but Tungchur Cheek is 100 million. Anyways, there's always a discrepancy in Tibetan numbers. He's saying 12 billion. I have to check my dictionary. But whatever the case is, Rinpoche said, then that doesn't necessarily mean that their minds are becoming more positive and less negative, and that they're taming their minds. And so if we look like a practitioner, but our minds are not being tamed, then we're not quite there yet. And so we don't want to have the appearance of a Dharma practitioner, but not be a Dharma practitioner. And our body and speech can take on the outer trappings of being a practitioner, but the true tell is observing our own mind. Are we taming our mind or not? Is our mind operating under disturbing emotions and afflictions and thoughts and so forth or not? And so even here today, we have all these people in the rows sitting nicely, looking like Dharma practitioners. And we're listening to the Dharma and contemplating and practicing and so forth. But what it really boils down to for each of us is not how we appear here, but what is our motivation? What are the thoughts that are motivating us for being here? Not that we look like a Dharma practitioner, but that we're actually practicing the Dharma, because it's possible that we could look like a Dharma practitioner, but not be practicing the Dharma. And so it's important to examine our own confusion and our own mistakes. And so that's why this is a practice of a bodhisattva. And here, then, we're looking at if we're incorporating the two accumulations of referential merit and non-referential wisdom into our practice. And it begins by really examining, if we're practicing correctly or not, and correcting that. Lasso.
Otere tenin dana zapta nyams lenam kindushi gwan baji ndumapshin ayang baji gomshi nindushi gwa chat sot patanze.
We're still at that first paragraph.
Tani de ngatu karre zena ta kyon dri shongkhyo re zer zo ta de ni kapso ngatu mikchi tang mikmek chok zate te chi hakko gore mikchi ge chok zate ngatu nawa ge nangcha ge gewi shoksikyorwa 차창 mikchi ge cho zekiore de zena kar zekore zenane ta lutan ngak goni gewa kareb drumnayang mikchi ge choknala ndogre sem ki tani innayang khwerna nyarjib gumyatang shangchib ki sem gumyatang devjin to chi tongsem gumyatang jirni gomyatang teto man chewata mikchi ge chogre mikchi ge chog zekiore teni mikmek ge chog zena kar zekore zena ne mikmek ge chog zena ne chu tamchi ki rom je tonit gomba de zekiore zo ti mikpi yur to tonit ingore hanilug ingore dorna kondengi juin teni ngatu Mingme zena dedi ke mikchi ke nangwi chala gewa te chola nyamlim shek mepa teni aniluk gum khoyo pa khena lagthong ke nyamling ke shokte zo mingme ke chokna la rogu kure khena lagthong ke nani tomba nit gum zeni ngatu hirp nyang bu nang la har sutra ka nang la yoba nang shin ka zuk tomba ni zuk so zuli kyang tomba ni jan main tomba ni kyang zuk jan mai no jipi tong ni jibjur ka nyamlen o te taw chik shina tak ming me ka cho zenan dik dev jin tu kargit panam ki lugla shirja chembo mahamudra zate ming me ka chokre sem ki niluk zo dekshik nyang po gom khuyore dev jin tu nyang mi zopa chembo zate gomna ming me ka chokre mikchi dang ming me ka chok ni ka tere huerna nga chu man ching don na o man pa me hong zena ti o man pa me hong sakhayo pi drate ti gewate kare zena mikchi ka chokre teni yang o man pa me hong ji bi niluk drati ram jin tongni dimba gom khyo pa te ha ko kuyo na ming me ka chok ze khyo don la nang wi cha tang tong wi cha da wo chik cha ko chok ni ka odin di res
So first, we need a clear definition of the accumulations, one that is referential and one that is non-referential. So the accumulations that are referential means they take something as their object. So we often refer to it as the merit that is referential when we engage in all kinds of positive actions, physically, verbally. We engage in any kind of positive actions. And then, so all actions of body and speech, they're kind of considered the apparent aspect, the manifest aspect, and they're referential. And then if our mind is meditating on an object like compassion, or meditating on bodhicitta, or meditating on generosity, or on shamatha, and so forth, all of that would be called the referential accumulations and those kinds of accumulations. The non-referential accumulations is where there is a recognition of the ultimate nature of phenomena. And so, for example, on top of that, or aside from that, where we aren't taking something as an object in the grasping to an object kind of way, but rather we're recognizing its empty nature, the natural state. So basically, when there's a referential object focused upon, all the kind of virtues of practices engaging body, speech, and mind and so forth is what we call the accumulation of merit with an object. And then non-referential accumulation is where then there isn't that objective reference, but rather, for example, we're meditating on the natural state, such as vipassana, profound insight meditation. And this could be various levels. For instance, then it could be considered meditation on emptiness, like the Heart Sutra, in which we have the fourfold reasonings of emptiness. Emptiness is form, form is emptiness, emptiness is not other than form, form is not other than emptiness. And so the four applications of emptiness on that level, and that would be included in non-referential accumulations. Or if we were practicing according to the Kagyu approach of what is called the Mahamudra, and we are practicing our Buddha nature according to that approach, that would be called a non-referential accumulation. Or if we are practicing according to the Nyingma approach of Dzogchen and meditating on that, that would be considered non-referential accumulation. And in any instance, we could actually be doing both. And so, for example, if you recite one Mani mantra, The recitation of the Mani mantra and the sound and so forth would be called the accumulation of referential merit. But then, if you're recognizing that the sound of the Mani mantra is emptiness, and you're recognizing its true nature, then that would be called the non-referential accumulation. Another way of referring to this is we could say accumulating according to the apparent aspect and accumulating according to the emptiness aspect. And so these are the two accumulations of which we speak. That's all.
오, 때리 때니 단디능라 가주 쫀가래 용교래에서는 땅오 뎁샤키오랜드니 잡도 냠솔은 두마시앙 바지고 카키킨데 딥셰크레에서 쪼분디니 깝습샤야테 냐마피 족친 거와도 시니 샤키오레 하고소아 족친 냠len 칸 인셈 칸 족친 톱 용칸 너디 남란디 뇨다요레에서 너 가사 깔라 뇨다요레 ngandawe nangi hachang mapom thomnyo de nishjon te so yongkhan ka mapom thomnyo o tendire teni zapton nyamsalen dumap siang baji gomshi ni ze ngatu di ne kap kan dumap shi gyang za te kar ze khore ze na na tab gom ze na ngatu sem kir ni lu dershik nyang potela ze gi ore ta ngatu ma tagna dershik nyang po ze gi ore 가리레 제나는 모니 샘기 람진 데라 샘기 람진 타르투팔라 돈 담비 뎀바 데니 가투 추르쿠 꼭솜 가나라 추르쿠 자치기와 오티 추르쿰 타르투파데 가투 샘라 요레 또이득샘 고랑 람진 데 Okay, tela tertabu churkute 참참랑 아주 예희제기요래 야나제 때리 돈라 윤던 타닥 족용 괜지그래 고랑글롱라 대식냥보 제데 따띠 ngok히제나 족친 ngok히제기요래 샘 그람지 ngok히나 되는이 그냥 접시당 때랑 information 다오 마토마 양치 ngoto 다오 당 족친 때리 가게제기요 말다 양 그냥 수 상노당 그래 대식냥 보고 거기 제기요 나투 샘 기람신 때다오래 샘 대식냥 보고 거랑 가르래 제나는 되니 윤던 타닥 바당 던요라 쫀 탐체당 짜리용칸 대식냥 보고 시데라 뉴모바 강그 구요 말 마릭바 푸자면 요 말. 둥을 푸자면 요 말. 가진 코랑 그람진 예니 누마시 그냥 때라 규킨 템들 그 고니나 말에 코랑. 예니 가츠 말씀 좀 메키르 바로신 마키 망각 남킹오 닛 소소랑을 얘기십시오 여러와 뚝숨 자료 용납상 살로 자치요와 언데 남진 그 저기 쉣 고납샤야 시다 메파치 당아투 셈라 셈기 추니 쟁아투 늘다우 덱식냥 보지 요리 어떤 일이에요?
So these days, some people practice the profound ultimate nature, but only put effort into meditating on non-composite basic space. So this text here, Mipham Rinpoche, is specifically referring to then people practicing the accumulation of non-referential wisdom from the perspective of the Nyingma approach, which is Dzogchen practitioners. And so there are many Dzogchen practitioners, he says, who think that they're practicing this. This is, Rinpoche said, definitely an issue that I've encountered on many occasions. And so this is the first sort of flaw that's being pointed out. And so the terms here are using the terminology of, or specific language of philosophy that's referring to the ultimate nature. So when we say non-composite basic space, that is another way of saying our Buddha nature. It's just a technical way of saying it. And so what they're saying ultimately is that some people are practicing the ultimate nature, are practicing Buddha nature, which means then they're practicing according to that. And that is the ultimate nature of our mind, the absolute truth. Another term for that is Dharmakaya, which could be roughly translated into English as the absolute dimension. But of the three kayas, Dharmakaya is the ultimate or absolute nature, and it is also a word used to describe the nature of our mind. Sometimes that Dharmakaya is also referred to as Yeshe or Jhana, timeless knowing. And so there are different terms used, but essentially, ultimately, then they're descriptive ways of speaking about the ultimate nature of mind, as it is here, non-composite basic space. It's talking about our Buddha nature. Practicing that means that there is recognition, a direct experience of knowing Buddha nature, of recognizing Buddha nature. Now, Rinpoche said today, and in this discussion, I'm not pointing out instructions of Dzogchen. We're talking about information about it, and so please don't be confused. We're speaking about our Buddha nature and the practice of that. And so our Buddha nature is complete with all positive qualities in entirety. And it is free from all flaws. This is the true fundamental nature of our minds. It is not sullied by, affected, or stained by our disturbing and afflictive emotions. It does not possess ignorance. It does not possess suffering. It is timelessly non-composite basic space. It is not a result of causes and conditions, the interdependence of, and the dependency of causes and conditions. It is indescribable, inconceivable, and inexpressible. The innate nature of our minds, the mother of all Buddhas, just like those words that we begin the Heart Sutra with. And so here then, we're speaking about practitioners who are perhaps attempting to practice that ultimate nature, to practice the Buddha nature here, which is being referred to as non-composite basic space. So.
Teni ta Dzogchen zete korang kandi niluk dekshik nyampo zete tela jit dzogpa chembo lam dzogpa chembo ribu dzogpa chembo zaya yore jit dzogpa chembo zena teni kyu lam nyams lennanda malennanda teni semchin tundro mbu chongchong chigi nayanda 탐체 그 샘기 니룩 데니디 덱식 냥보요 바텔라 지족 바침보 제키오레 연단 쌈지마 캬피람진진 그 람진진 요레 연단 군당 단요피 덱식 냥보 제 때리지요레 람족 바침보 제나 가르제키오레 제나 Teni ngatu rimba bjento, kansam chila lamla yugni, teni kyamro semke kungo tsugni, teni rimki sem durwi chu lamla yugni, chu tsurjinta nyams lenni, teni sak thamkan namki ngonro yang sak, Teni Mikchi Mingmek Sokmabo Chignam Shi Part of Shimba Tugyang Drip Teni Shini Kansam Chigla Sem Durson with Kabla Tulava Pirni Kabnana of Lami Teni Jupa Satang Dambi Lama Chika Tabla Teni Moto Yayore Rank Sem Kernilukla The Chik Hob Jung Shini Rigpa Mampo Tangni Hakondo Achi Yomare Koranguni Shana Tawachik Oops Davore Korang Kansam Chiglate Tula Wapi Ni Kamna Lamsang Hakondo Achi Mo Hit Samjik Zekiomi Ti Mala Lam Ki Dzogchen Zekore Lam Dzogchen Teni Ndivu Dzogchen Zate Ti Lam Te Nyamlen Shini Mao Pana Function Tat Fantar Sona Ranks Deshik Nyampo Rank Semla Yeni Chirtawa Yopate Mund Kursona Ndivu Dzogpachembo Zer The Hachang Zamori in the Ngara Rana Soso the Halibi Tagnevore. Jikten King Kamlan Dili Tagne Huchinga so Yomare. Nato Dom Derba Yunken. Tarta Rank Sem Ninduk Yonanda. Rank Sem Yoke Yonayanda. Ninju Kamshit Dupinit Kam Nayan. Mohina Deshik Nyampo Degarang Yore, Tela Yore. Tatanguni Sangi at the Terry. Gondungi Patunki Jambian Zet and Terry. Oh, Dendi Deshik Nyampo Zet Yore, Tangato. Tertoxona teti lil havore. Der toya teti kakpore matum toxona lil havore. Ngatu lurten di tangla. Tarta ngatu lurten mi lurten dedi yakpochik top. Teni gewi shimnin tangyam chat. Damgak zammo yang nyam solenki yo pirnik kapndala. Ngipert ndi ngoki tapchik gogore. Ta mahina Sendi Tolaten Dertawchi Ngo Mahina, Deni Husonata, Parcher Ngatu, when a Serlan Chigla Tony, when and Deni Lantern de Jamba, Chilandona, Sapshuk Tamchet of Serina, Deni Keran Trazana, if Shirla Yoni Kana, Ser Chicken Malani, Lobatomba Levion of Jinchikore. De la Stroa Kiguya. Ngato yopa tamla yang gawa gumguya. The mamabu yoper hiri omare. Dekshak nyampo yoper hini, nderta u sangi jik ni sem kanala yore, sam hakona, te chamki kyan sem ki kyo amampot tang rogin songore. Ngato chowa ta ngato gawa ke guwa chikre. Odenti resi. Nanazar to nyamsulen namki.
So when we say Dzogchen, which is often commonly translated as great perfection, and a literal translation would be great completeness. Then we have what's called ground Dzogchen, path Dzogchen, and fruition Dzogchen. Ground Dzogchen, the great completeness of the ground, is then the fact that whether we do any practice or not, as sentient beings, no matter who we are, or what our circumstances are, even a tiny insect, all of us possess the nature of our mind, have our mind's natural state, what we call the Buddha nature. And that nature is Dzogchen, is great completeness. All positive qualities in entirety are complete within our nature. It possesses or is innately all potential positive qualities.
지 Dzogchen zena kar Dzogchen zena.
So ground Dzogchen.
대 zena ngātsu korwi rāngā sosu namtok nduwa ngātsu sen namtok yorwa. Tsawa marik patang namtok tamchet di delap tenni khar korwa yang delap tenni fyongre. 대ብ신도 명을린디 비용단 탐쳤다 성직 용단 탐쳤다 대식량 보여 발랐더니 흉쾌어래.
맞아.
딥셔난 코르디 니키 지레. 딥셔난 대랑 지족 받침 보세래.
And so this is called ground Dzogchen because everything, all of samsara and nirvana arise from it. And so one hand, all that constitutes samsara, beginning with a non-recognition of it, and then all the concepts and thoughts and so forth that come from that, then that comes from our Buddha nature. And likewise, when we look at nirvana, a transcendence of suffering, all of the positive qualities of realizing that, of recognizing that, and experiencing all those positive qualities and awakenings, then they come from that. And so it is the ground of all of samsara and nirvana, and that's called ground Dzogchen. Then path Dzogchen means that we engage in practice. And so typically it's a gradual process for the vast majority in which we go for refuge, we generate bodhicitta, and then we gradually go through all the stages of taming our mind and the different practices of the path. And if we're someone who's capable, we accumulate the series of practices called ngundro, and we continue to practice referential and non-referential. We gather the two accumulations of merit and wisdom. We engage in the six perfections, and we tame our mind. And then, as our mind is more tamed and malleable and so forth, when the time is right, and we have a qualified spiritual teacher, a guru, who's has the qualifications to give such instruction, then they point out to us the nature of our mind. And we're able to recognize it. We have a recognition. Recognition doesn't come through study or using your logical mind to figure it out. It's more like oops. It's like it just like happens when the time is right. There is recognition, and it's immediate, and it's present. And so when there is a direct recognition or a glimpse of the nature of mind, then, and from then onward, each recognition is called path Dzogchen. That's the path. Fruition or resultant Dzogchen is then that we engage in the path, and eventually we are able to refine away and eliminate all that we wish to be free from, and to realize our true nature, our Buddha nature, just as it is, timelessly present and complete. It becomes fully evident, fully actualized, and then that is result Dzogchen on the most profound level. The irony, Rinpoche said, is that our Buddha nature is the very closest thing to us. There is nothing and no one else as close to us as the nature of our own mind. Whether our mind is busy or whether our mind is still, at all times in stillness or movement, our Buddha nature is there. And if we recognize it, it's simply right there. Because we always have it. And it's always present.
탁 예후 대양들의
It's the closest thing to us,
Teni mdar mchet patyang dere.
and it's the only thing we'll never be separate from.
Jikten kamla chatsang
In
darbi
the whole world, everything else we will be separated from. There is nothing
Tananga
that
tu
we
tarti
won't
nam
be
tok te
separated
toyam
from.
darbi ramjin chante.
Even our current concepts and thoughts, we will eventually be
Lu
separated
tong
from
chatsang
those.
prat do garwa.
Our body and speech, yes, will be separated from those.
Yenna sem kirni
However, the nature of our mind, our Buddha nature, we will never be separated from that.
Yun ta yang ti che me ku tere.
And that is there is no greater source of qualities. The greatest qualities are there.
Zuk zena karze.
When we say Dzogchen, Dzog,
Yun tan
Complete.
tatak ta korang la zukhu yo pi
it means all the qualities in entirety are complete.
Chen zena karze kore.
Chen, which is great.
Zok chen zena great zena. Daily kumar
That
kirwa
there's
chi
nothing
kaang
more
yo
than
ma.
that. There isn't
Lana
something
meta.
beyond that surpasses that. It's
Ti mala
the
zok chen
highest.
zeri ha ko so a. Te nga
And so
kola
that's
yori.
what we call Dzogchen, great completeness. And that is that nature that is right there, that is already ours. That is the actual Buddha. That is the definitive meaning of Manjushri, our Buddha nature. On the one hand, due to its ever-present closeness and simply what it is the most simple thing to know. And yet it can be so difficult to realize. And we have this human body, which is a support for realizing that. In the Tibetan, whenever they say body, they say the body that is a support. Lu is body and then is support. They always add that word. We don't say it so much in English because it sounds awkward. But we have this human body that is a support. And we've encountered qualified spiritual teachers. And we've received profound instructions. And so this time, we must absolutely realize this. Because in this life, if we don't recognize it, and we leave this life behind, it's like going to an island made of gold and returning without bringing anything back, leaving empty-handed. And so we have this very precious opportunity, and it's worthy of deep appreciation and something that we should aspire to recognize our Buddha nature, to realize our Buddha nature. Just appreciating the fact that we have a Buddha nature and that we can recognize and realize that alone has the power to dispel an enormous amount of sadness and hardship and to bring a great sense of inspiration and joy into our lives. Listen.
Teni this daily zap daily jante kirpi Dzogchen jipali jante kirpi lam zamo chigi yo mare. Teni titi hako sonana glam sadawa chi ngohi sonana daily jante kirpi lil habo yang yo mare. Gum jap kuna. Rang tang tak tum rer du gorba tu tak. Ka tu ngohi ma khire ma to tu tak to nga cho tang nyam ti yore. Ti sherna ka tu tanna ka tu ti ngalan ro bye kare. Tendi kelil hawo. Tendi zammo yore. Marik pa fon thabya ta. Teni zonte nyamnen komper ten ro thabya. Cha chamate tande Ndi zap chik yo mares.
Listen. There is no other path more profound than this. And if we're able to glimpse it, to have recognition of it, then there's nothing more easy than this because it's always with us. It's always present with us, whether we recognize it or not. And so it's the most simple thing to practice because it's always there. It's actually quite amazing. We don't have to do contemplative meditation or anything. We don't have to use reasoning and logic to determine what it is. We don't need to sit in front of a fancy shrine or mandala. It's the most simple, most easy thing to do. And it is very profound, and it is the direct remedy, recognizing it would be knowing, to not know, ignorance. And so it is what remedies that, and what increases our practice in all ways. And so it is the most profound approach. Mipham?
Teni Tanandi need Kapdela Karilab Kores and an Duma Shiang Baji Gomni Nurse, a Kaki Ker, Nderta Utani Dzogchen Yamlen Kan Namki, Yamlen Yang Tapango Mam Chotpanam. Dzogchen Kalam Mirpochi Yams Len took a main can Namlan Di Chon the Jonque or Ezer. Can't ta. Ndushi gave a cat of sort patans. Karezena, oh, not Dzogchen Yamlen Kanyenze. Teni tell example of Shang Saria Teto Kare Gugure. Teni give a Dubia Teto Kare Gugure. Teni Nyemba Mampo Soya Zate Karishini Gugure. Gugumandoks. Nga tell you Jante Kurim, Chok to Kirby, Dzogchen Ganyamlen Yores. Yugjak Gores. Gave a Dub Gukio Mare. Jamba. Marme Chaguyo Mares. Tsondon Gugumandoks. Teto Gonzob Kuture or Tapa Yujuk. The Chasut Shini, Nipju Shini. The Goyachik Mares. 13 hours some Duncan Mambo Yore. The Ni Kares and the Chuba Muki Hers at a Yongre Kansam Chilla. The Karezekores in the Chuba Muki Herzena. Choksak the Papjanwi. Nyamnen ke cha jamba kaya me lobjong yang shet mamnyo mufshet murga nyembab sakya yang murga korap shaya yang murga o tedi shini te yang yo marwa cho kaya chola kaya yo mar teni zamu nilu ngoma te yang martok Mathe Kala Ting on a Lunin Takado Great. Timala Chuba Muki Huzere. Kala Zaya Metula Koya Meni Hose Marta. In a Hivini Captella, Choknika Kaya Yomar. Zaya Toya Kaya Meni Hazon Ramshet. Tela Chuba Muki Huzere.
Awesome.
Oh, then it is.
So, what's being said here is that there are some who think that they're practicing this, what we've just been speaking about, a Dzogchen practitioner. But what's indicative that that's not the case is that, so here some people practice the profound ultimate nature, but only put effort into meditating on non-composite basic space, while dismissing composite positive actions and practices. And so then they're like, I'm a Dzogchen practitioner. And so that's all I focus on. And then I don't focus on those other practices because they're lesser. Why would I want to prostrate?
Sem kono tum jong yore, nguni yore ta
So
mama.
they're dismissive of, they think it's less important.
Li jumri la samlo tang yo mar te kansak te chu.
They're not thinking of karma cause and result or the importance of positive actions. They're like, why would I go out and engage in virtuous actions? Or why would
These
I
accumulation
accumulate
practices,
mantras?
sometimes I heard these people saying is these accumulation practices, it doesn't speak with me. I just only want the nature of mind. You know, I'm Dzogchen practitioner. I'm Mahayana practitioner. You know, this other, it doesn't make sense for me. It doesn't speak with me.
And so they belittle or put down these other practices. They're like, I don't want to make butter lamps, and I don't want to do tsok feast offerings, and so forth. And so when someone is devaluing, when someone is devaluing these other practices, then it's not a good sign. And they have a saying in Tibetan, the Dharma practitioner dies of starvation. It's not literal. We'll get there in a moment. And so, in general, then our practice is through the process of the two accumulations, and we're gathering accumulations and purifying obscurations. But when someone is like, oh, I'm only doing this higher, more evolved practice, and I don't need any of those other things, and I don't want to do mind training. I don't like mind training, and I don't like doing mantra recitations, and I don't like doing kora circumambulations, and I'm not going to do anything else. Only I'm going to meditate on the nature of my mind. And so, like, for example, like the 7 branch offerings, we see that in so many different texts, again and again, in the sutras and tantras. We have the 7 branches of offerings. But they don't like those things, and they don't focus on them. And so, when they look down on them, and are dismissive of lower, kind of lesser practices. This is a huge mistake, Rinpoche said.
You see, when the, Dzogchen Pa, we call the Dzogchen practitioner Jigme Lingpa, you know everybody, most people familiar in Jigme Lingpa, Nyingma Pa's master, Jigme Lingpa. Jigme Lingpa did a 12 years retreat. How much he did. He said, the view is only a contentment with Dzogchen view. That he said. And then, beside that, I had done so many mantras in these 12 years. So many deities, yidam practices I did that. That much he did. Why? Jigme Lingpa is a Dzogchen master. People don't know these things, and then the people thinking, oh, why Jigme Lingpa need that much? Why he not only Dzogchen practice? Why he need to do these accumulations? You know, that's you need to care for.
And so when one claims to be practicing on that profound level, but is devaluing, dismissing, and looking down on the other practices, it's a sign that they haven't actually realized that nature and that they're lost. And that's why they have the saying, the Dharma practitioner dies of starvation. It doesn't mean that they died because they didn't have literal food and water. It means that they died without gathering any of the two accumulations, that they had no food to feed them through that dying process, in a spiritual sense. Also.
Oh yeah, teni jenir mingme yavi. Oh yeah, mucho que kiatsot. Amici con tonti pu gerza la jenir mingme yavi ton vorte. Soni teni Desondwa ta tapshuk chigreze chun magi oglap shandwa ta Dzogchen martuk pi wang lip shong reze. Dzogchen ngoni tongkan yenna gewa drupala gag yore. Dzogchen ngoni tongkan yenna gewa drupala chowa yore, gewa drupala tapa yore. Chebzang Dzogchen martuk pi wang lip shong songdwa ogla. Dzogchen zapton martuk wang lip shong se. Te chigrwa yagirla la Ndushi di gewa kyaso shiya te tang chik ayuk jekpa te tang chikchi teni yang kachi kandari re sere mikchi ke tsokwana sakni these Dzogchen practices, emptiness practices, the niluk kunyamlen I don't care zekyur tela so mikchi tak nyam nem she gore ze khwe na nyemba chang sakni shewa ma bo tong sher ma bo sak sa nyam len ma bo shin dip shi zeni dri ma bo shet yang ma na kora ma bo ro ma che kala yang ma na shek ma bo cha ma che kala Tek chigbula chakang jembab shini. Di chakamaran samsamla nga tu kerang chopem jonghui ore. My daily practice zakachi. Ni tani zan pe changzan ki rong ka daily practice. Khamikchi ka chokte sola changzan chenpo kini. Khamik me nilu ku ton gomyate gagi o mar yug jekhi ore. Tashkyung chik re zende, tendi nang tata. Tak chik jembim changwa shashar po. Tak chik to jemba kip chang ni. Rong ka tig mik chik nyam nan tela. Nga tso polla samlo, ya, dati bar sota, it's okay.
Awesome. And so as you can see in the last line of this paragraph, it says, this happens because they have not realized the profound meaning of Dzogchen. So how you would have a practitioner, for instance, focusing only on one aspect of the practice and then putting down and dismissing other very important aspects of the practice, such as this case, the composite actions and practices, is because they have not realized Dzogchen. And so this is one of the flaws that can happen with practitioners. If someone genuinely has realization of Dzogchen, it also means they have a complete appreciation for all of the practices of virtue, for all positive and virtuous actions, and all of the referential practices of merit. They will have great enthusiasm for those practices and faith in those practices, and they will engage in more of those practices. And their loving kindness and compassion will grow. They're engaging in the other positive activities and practices will grow. Their benefit to beings will grow. And so if one genuinely has a recognition and practice of Dzogchen, then all of these things, the referential aspect of the accumulations will expand exponentially. If that isn't happening, and particularly when they're looking down on those things, then it's this last line. This happens because they have not realized the profound meaning of Dzogchen. So that's one of the possible pitfalls. The other is the opposite. Others grasp the roots of virtue with concepts that solidify referential objects while losing the meaning of non-referential pervasive openness. And so there are other practitioners who focus solely on referential gatherings of accumulation and are really interested in lots of actions and not interested or confident that they could understand the ultimate nature. So they chant lots and lots of mantras, maybe billions of mantras, and they accumulate all kinds of positive actions. Or they spend their entire life, their main practice is doing kora, circumambulations. Or their main practice is prostrations. But that's all they focus on, is doing all these practice activities. And they grasp to them as being very solid and real, and they like solidify them and focus on them. You can tell sometimes when people speak about their practice, they're like, my practice. They use the word my daily practice, and there's an intense attachment to it and grasping to it. And so, and then they don't attempt to cultivate the wisdom of the ultimate nature, and they're maybe not even interested in doing that because they're so fixated on being good and doing all the positive actions and doing all the practices and activities and so forth. This too, this grasping and fixation to the other side also will prevent any kind of progress, and it happens because they have not realized the profound meaning of Dzogchen. Listen.
In Tibet, I remember when I was young, these days I don't think so, there is a older practitioners anymore. The most practitioners, older ones, elder ones already passed away. But I remember some monks, lamas, they had the daily practice is huge, the text, like hundreds of pages. And they do just before the breakfast they do, and after breakfast they do this finished. And then evening there is Dharma protectors, and like a really big, lots of pages. They practice pujas, and then they have drums, and also the musicals, and they do themselves. Drums, everything go together. All that, everything they can do together. But when one day they forget, never forget, but if there is some reason they couldn't do that one day, they really, really disappointed. That much the focus. But many, many people, they don't have any of these Dzogchen practice, Mahamudra practice, emptiness practice. That part just left over. So many I remember. That Mipham Rinpoche, he know these people. They doing this. This not only you, like for only you, for Western people. One day, Dharma going to Western countries. At that time, many people want a very easy way and a shortcut, and then they try Dzogchen practices, and they don't want to do any other virtuous. Therefore, I'm going to give these teachings. No. We have had in Tibet, we have these problems. That's why he's talking. Now it's this speaking you. Today I'm teaching from here. He did this, composed a long time ago in the Kham region in Tibet. Kham, Amdo, Lhasa, Uzang means Lhasa. And so this is an amazing way how to talk. And in America, I know some practitioners, they're doing a lot of practices. They went to many different empowerment and met many different teachers. And teachers give them different practices, and they try everything together. Deities. Okay, one finish it, and the next one is a Chinese, and then Dom and Tara practices. And then Vajrasattva practices. And then after that, another practices. And then many people, I remember, come to me, ask me what to do. It's so much. They thinking they cannot stop this. Sometimes I tell them, just stop it. Only do simple way. Because they never talk the other one, the very profound meditation. They totally forget that part. That is the problem. Yes, there is explanations down there. We will get there. Don't worry, you have already your mind lots of questions. I know that. Then how can we practice? Because we don't, beginning, when we do in practice, we have, I cannot do both together. So, but that is coming down there. You have answer. No problem. Beautiful answers. Okay? That is Mipham Rinpoche, you know? Omniscient Mipham Rinpoche. Don't worry about it. I know what you're thinking. Yes, America very funny. When you listening, you questions. Listening, questions. Why? What? Yeah. So, Teniret, Tifshernam. Dzogchen Yams Lenkanina, Li Jimdi La Pe, Namjur watching in the Pe, Zab, Halipa Zabkre, Zabzab Shekorin, Gurumbochi, Lartawa Namkavi Chang To, Li Jimdi Wakshevi Chang Zab Zayua. Change the Wakirant. The Lomambu Nala Yori, Jomambu Nala. Li Jimdi Zatem, Trajan Tawani, Murgewa Mapsak Patang, Murgewam Tawa ni don Fangukuris. Gewam Tawa ni Dubgukuris, Rangakan Tap Tap. Tingato Tata, Murgewa Chonchonjik Fantapna, Gewa Chonchonjik Dubtapna. The Dubtapi Korkap Yakpokaro Wangazo. Tati Lurten Ditala. Gewa Toma Mepituni Tawa, the Chiktana, Gewa Chiktang Nalam Ko Mamyung Kankasemchen yo Tikre. Shunjuk and song you are tanging the Wakirans. Chirtern Samo Munrub Munakturub na. Terta un Sambo Mumma Munak Yinla. Mumba Yimba Mazat Sanach Stunba Nakpo Tapiola. Di Nani, Nato Shilula Komba Yamni Rokiona, Sam Samlak look diti, Ding Dawashini, Chuk Sam Chik look diti. Saria Yorova Namkani. Titi Nato Kawan Rohio, Titi Hakograva. Te Johnson Yopate. Where te Nangjin Shonjukunala Karisonre, Gevat and Tatpi Kapla, Kumbin do Hitchis. Tela Halipachik, Gago Grace. Jikton Sonum Lo to Tangam Jones, Eore. Tazena Karzek Horizona, Gavi Sem Zate, Tamare Nirem, Yonyo Marzere, Keomabunala. Ranla leaves on what you patang. Come sur some Kishan Lablab Tenni, Nato Teni Mundakanang la Lokchupanavjen, Gavi Sem Karharachik Semna la Karres. Tate Zim Gukres at a Muptani. Ti gave out the drop cookeries. Gurumboji teli Jambachi Kareson Rezena Nam to Mazat Vart Li Yot Pi Li Ki Numberman La Voyot Zots Nam to Mazak Vart Li or Reser Some Argik Vart Li or Resekiore Li mergewapsak gewapsak na delam driu dewatang dungar korang chunyi deze temdir ke rolu greze te. Li ki number man la wagyo zo sen Li kim driu shongure tipshana pe zabzab che gore jipi tonde. Authentically. Li number man la wagyo zo.
A Dzogchen practitioner, a yogi, meaning one immersed in genuine being, is extremely refined in their conduct, places great care in all actions being causes that produce results. Just like Guru Rinpoche said, the view is higher than the sky, and the conduct in regards to cause and result is more refined than flower. Many of you may have heard that or read it in various texts.
Tawa tenim tombo nam kartabun tombo
When one's view is as vast as the sky, still they are extremely careful in terms of their actions being causes that produce results. They're still careful in terms of karma. And so, at all times, we must exercise great care to refrain in even the tiniest negative action that presents itself to us, and to engage in even the seemingly smallest or insignificant positive action that presents itself to us, so that we're refraining from even the smallest slights or negatives and engaging in even the tiniest positives. And in this way, then, we're really making sort of use or value of this opportunity that we have now in this life, which is full of potential. There are beings, it is said, who since beginningless time up until this moment have never even once heard an encouragement to virtue. It is possible. Like many of you are familiar with the famous treatise Entering the Way of a Bodhisattva by Shantideva, in which he discusses the rarity of true, like holy, positive thoughts and actions. And he gives this analogy of a dark, cloudy night. That is, so the sky is enshrouded by clouds. It's completely dark outside, and you're walking outside, and then there's a moment where a flash of lightning, just for a moment, and it lights up the sky, and it lights up the earth, and you can see where you're going for that moment. And that light is an analogy for virtue, for what is wholly positive in this world. That there are so many circumstances that we don't encounter that, and so many beings for many lifetimes who never even conceive of that. And that the positive karma and the power and presence, the blessings of the three jewels, is said to be like that flash of lightning in the dark sky. And it's such a rarity, and we should treat it with that sense of preciousness and really grasp the opportunity and accomplish what is positive and disengage in what is negative. Because as Guru Rinpoche said, until all of our discursive thoughts are entirely exhausted. Our experience will be determined by the ripening of karma, cause, and result. And so until that point, where every conceptual framework is completely exhausted, we are run by karma, cause, and result. The fully ripened effects of our actions will continue to ripen upon us. Lesso?
때니 대초 가르레즈 나네 다 Dzogchen 냠슬랭기엔 제니 믹지 그게와 탐체 캬습시나 데 Dzogchen 그 돈자모도 마스톡비 왕립 쇼레 스티 쫀데 또 쫀데 지비 쫀데 너나 쫀님버 가주 하고고 그요레데 데니 영 믹지 정와다 냠슬렌니 영 믹메크 돈라 쪼와다 나가 맨나네 대한 Dzogchen 마스톡비 왕립 쇼레 세레 Dzogchen stogna는 믹지 믹메 강그냠는 인경네 할리바 쪼와요레 지비 쫀데 다티 tani 돈라 zonjugo sonkhiyore 돈라 니가 zonjugingo sonre tanti zonjug ton ogla kale shongre tani karte zonjug ngoma malep ko warto rinju kuturki shena yan dik sonre teso ogla yore tandangin deni shakman odini res.
So, essentially, in summary, this paragraph, if someone is solely focused on the ultimate practices, non-referential trainings, and then they dismiss composite actions of positive and virtuous nature and look down upon them, then this is a problem. And this means they have not realized the profound meaning of Dzogchen. On the other hand, if someone is extremely fixated on positive actions and other practices and grasping to those intensively and not cultivating the non-referential view, this is also a problem, and this also happens because they have not realized the profound meaning of Dzogchen. And so both are a pitfall. And so what does that mean? It means that we need to learn how to unify the two accumulations, to integrate the two in our practice. And later, it'll talk about what a practice looks like when the two are unified. And until then the practice is where we alternate between the two, which is also going to come in the text. So I'm not going to speak about that now, but that is all going to come. Also?
tani yang tagatton la mixo menna yang chester nawarorwi gayin pi chikla de permangerwa ramji nyam tsongna che yang deser ta nde kari reze kyore janane ta nang tong zon de jukpa ke ni churla ni lu khorang ko wa tu shina kane da wore zena nguni ndri yingure ze kyore telak chikla warchet yo mare zer chikla drip ka mare zer chik nyamlen shina chik kaksundo wata tani yo mare zer nilu khorang ka wa samlo tangna pena nyamjik ka tawa Dzogchen ka nyamlen shina ti khorang ka ngani samlo tangna Kanyang mix me pares, Kanyang matapada, to chutamchit tony dingre secure. Yenayang daily Natuta deshik nyang pungohina zekiorwa. Dehta ngohi bi hirpti yurte chutamche tonites. Yenayang ti rolwade, ti starli karwa. Tamchet gende, the konyengarwa fotamio mares. When the Natu Samlo Tana, 지금 Dzogchen 곰독나 곰비니 깝나 가레레제나 지금 믹맥 돔공회요 봐. 어믹지 그 냠는 직 소놈 그 족직 싹 탑크메 봐. 라오지 레제나 마레제. 믹맥 그가라 tawa yekpo tok yong kan yenna telang garba yo mare ze kyo re migme ke ngala nyambar yek jin te yenna yo migji ke rorwa kare kharna yo khona ti charli kare khar kyona khorong gen des khona nga chu jamcho chembu long la nyima tang karma tang dawa so pa tham je kare kharna yo jamsolak no pa potam yo mare khar chokho yo re jamso khorang gen da bore khorang chachu da bore se kang khar rongwa kang khar chok pa yimba khorang chachu re se ti shena ngubu nilu kwang to shina chik chikla de par mangirar ramje nyam to ngana chiang des amikpa mepi Dzogchen ke ringo tang ti glong ni kharwa ni ka chik chikla garwa yo mar chik chikla drip ka mar se ramje nyam to ngana chiang de khorang glong to dershik nyangpu ayangala chu thamchet ups chipa chu thamchet tingang tandu ti tsar tang ti gen de se ti shena kang kharna yang zu da tr ro rakshi nawa kharna yang da nyumu bi nam tok kharna yang da gewa mapo dripi kharcha yin na yang da thamchet kang kharna ti long la is devoris che yang deris tendi ke zammo chigre zekyore Dzogchen jipi ton to toksona odendi re rangje nyam zolong na che yang des te zekyore da ngoni nilu migmek nilu te tang ti star di kharwi nawa ni ka garwa chi kan yo mars Gento kharwa ma to como tela kharma chok panda wo kang mares kang kari kang mares nilu korang ko wa to shina 어떤지 갈땐 까발로 그랬고 최초
就是你当这个内需当这个板头，
최초 니로와
就是你。
그래
Although the actual true nature of reality is not a referential object, since all that appears is its ornamental display, these do not obscure each other. And within this natural state of equalness and completeness, everything whatsoever is easeful. So this is speaking from the perspective of our natural state. And that in that, there is the unity of appearances and emptiness from our natural state's own perspective. It is like this. And so it is such that in the natural state, then the appearances that arise, whatever they may be, they don't cause a problem to that natural state. They don't contradict that natural state. They don't prevent it from happening. And vice versa. So they're not like a problem for each other. And so, for example, someone who is resting in the view of complete evenness, a Dzogchen practitioner in an authentic way, then when they're resting in that recognition of the natural state, whatever arises within their experience, whatever it may be of appearances, or we could say of referential objects and so forth, it does not obscure the experience of the natural state. It doesn't contradict that natural state, because all phenomena themselves are emptiness, are contained within that state. And so when there is the direct experience of recognizing Buddha nature, in the scope of that wisdom that is recognizing, it includes all phenomena, because the nature of all phenomena is emptiness. And so all of it is within that experience. And so it's called, from that perspective, the display. And so in no way do the appearances themselves contradict that nature. That is to say that if someone is capable of resting in Dzogchen meditation, which is non-referential, can they accumulate the referential accumulations of merit and so forth? They can. They can do both at the same time. And so while the view is non-referential, within that, I've got a shelf life as to how long I can suppress everything. Well, within that view, its expressive energy can arise as anything and everything that manifests. And the experience is that all is an ornament to that awareness, that experience of recognizing true nature. The analogy to this is like the ocean. You have a vast ocean. And if you have a still vast ocean, it has the potential to reflect all of the sun and stars and moon, the whole galaxy, whatever's in the sky can be reflected on the surface of the ocean. Even no matter what is reflected on the surface of the ocean, it never harms or changes the ocean. Rather, it appears as an ornament to the ocean. The ocean itself is nature, its clear nature allows for that reflective quality of things to arise and to manifest. But no matter what is reflected on it, no matter how it appears in its many different ways, it never harms the ocean, and that is a special feature of the ocean. And so, similarly, when it comes to the natural state, the arising of appearances do not obscure it. And so in non-referential Dzogchen, the vast expanse of awareness, everything can manifest within that expanse, and nothing contradicts it or changes it. And so for someone who can rest in this, everything is easeful. Because everything is encompassed within that true nature, and within that expanse, it all arises as the ornament of awareness. And so in that true nature, forms, sounds, scents, tastes, tactile sensations, disturbing emotions, positive thoughts, and actions can all arise. But at whatever arises, the mind is at ease. It's very profound, this meaning of Dzogchen. And so essentially, in that non-referential natural state, all that arises is said to be its own expressive energy, appearing, not something other than it or contradictory to it. And so it appears or manifests like a ornamentation. And there isn't anything that can't arise in that space. And so this is from the perspective of the natural state. Also.
Tertamoki tambu lichenki cholli glokso nam tong perwi gun rejik jigni nyumar ngarsu terang rang tang komba chek parmbat soni tatani ndela ali tambo panam ki nyam slenser shedje tani tertawu tsoni zonjuk tep shed matap na ta kare gokhiore zena ta ndidi chikshe gokre sonri li tambo pi Li tangbo bazena ndeze ki ore tandi chula yugni nyamso lenkan xarwa imbi ton mare. Kare re zenane huena Dzogchen ton nyamso blangni tatong tawam thombo malep kongkor ngul la li tangbo ba zeki ore. Tawam thombo la malep ko warka 다 Dzogchen kāngla kāngsam ka ngōm chot yo la, gilum si yo tsarna yang, tarong li tangwo pi tala tsigu kyo rin di wang tu shi na, ma tong yang chula yugni lo nyaga sam chip chip che nan digre. Te ta wuli chen nan karib she gukure zeret. Ta te tso yin na, ni kap so, sem kar nilu ngoki oro wa, yin na yang, sem kar nilu ka nga to mnyam shik shed vyin to, tam chet te shed tab ka med na zeri. Hoi na li tongwa ba tendi yung ki oro wa, rang rang so su nyam ling kan nam ki shkyon re ma tong ma ngubu nilu ku shkyon mar ta. Dzogchen kirik pa korang ka shkyon mar ta, yin na nga tsu, nyam ling kan nam ki chirta wa vyin to nyam so len mekhi ni, teni di shkyon to yung ki oro. Hoi na nilu ngo hi yung ka ka kansag yin na, ta nilu ku nga rigbi nga makhor vyin to, gewi chu tam chette, sonum ka chu tam chet, mikchi sonum ka tsok tam chette, kangla njuk na yang, njuk tam kan tang, tendi yinba chik, yung ki yung mar. Ta ona karif shek gore eser. Te yin na ni kap so, teni ta chopa mangpo borwa tang, ngak mangpo lawa tang, teni zhong mangpo loya tang, shik mangpo tsalaya tang, teb jin to mandrel mangpo sakya la sokpa. Gewi chu tam chette, nam tok to kongpen rogo yore ezere, ta khwen na tela njuk na nam tok kongpen rogo rawa. Tadan ro ten rore, kor gewa re, tar gewa tam chette yang nam tok rawa. Gewa yin na nga nam tok re, khwen na nyang je gom na nam tok re, shamba gom na nam tok re. Teni dawo yin na, rejik teni kerang ka sonum ka tsok jachen bob sakya la, vijik shik nan de kendo uze re. Rejig Vjekni, Teni Nilukunga to Gumjap. Teni Rank Rikpati Comfort Nokre, Seri Nyamlenda. Gum te Yargi Comfortati in Rotarsona, Teni Soksak Yona, Sony Zonjuk Shaktap Saktapshin and Rikre Zeni, Terson Yonkioreta, or Teni Res.
Nevertheless, those who are new practitioners to this should temporarily lay aside making offerings, recitation, study, and so forth, which proliferate the stream of thoughts, and rest in innate naturalness, endeavoring to familiarize in a naturally settled, naturally clear state. So, while it is possible to be resting in awareness and for everything to arise and it not be a problem,
Marta Penyo Tori. The Mipham Rinpoche chat someone did that all you go.
I know. Yeah, it's okay. So, beginners here means someone who has not reached a high level of the view of Dzogchen. So, it doesn't mean someone who's new to the Dharma. Beginners in this context is someone who has not reached the point where they can unify the two accumulations simultaneously, as with the previous paragraph, who have not reached a highly evolved level of the view of Dzogchen. So everybody is called a beginner until that point. And so then someone could have practiced the Dharma for 20 or 30 years. But if they haven't taken that initial glimpse or recognition of awareness further and reached that stability of a high level of a view, then they're still called a beginner. And so that's, to be clear, that's what a new practitioner or beginner here means. And so then Mipham Rinpoche is saying, if you haven't yet stabilized the capacity to rest in meditative equipoise, recognizing that Buddha nature, and while anything and everything arises, or while gathering the accumulations, but you have had a recognition of that, and you're ready to practice Dzogchen, then for a time, he said, should temporarily lay aside. And so then it's appropriate that for some periods of time, you stop all the other practices and positive actions and so forth that you might ordinarily do in order to develop, to focus on the non-referential aspect. And so then there might be a period of time where it's appropriate not to be engaging in making lots of offerings and mantra recitations and study of texts and prostrations and mandala offerings and every other kind of virtuous positive action we could imagine. And so it's not because it's not important, but that you might need to set those aside for a time so that you can cultivate non-referential practice. And the reason why is because all of those stir up our conceptual thoughts. Like even just any positive, whatever is called virtue, that is a concept. And compassion is within the conceptual framework, and love is within a conceptual framework. And so all of the vast accumulations of merit with a reference point then can be temporarily laid aside in order to focus on non-referential practice. And so in order to develop and cultivate that capacity to meditate in the natural state and increase one's practice ability there. And so then eventually, as that grows and is developed, then there's a point where we can begin to unify the two accumulations. And so Mipham Rinpoche is giving this advice here. So
뭐야, 되니까 뭐 병강 알수 찍지.
we'll take a 15-minute break.
15 minutes.
시당 개랑 주진 니chen 그 break 제기요 말해.
Not for everyone, but if somebody want to go out. Go quickly, very fast. What are you doing here? Yeah, she's just still here. I'm going to 15 minutes. I'm going to
Om sa
Ram tang komba. Oh, de rejik jagni nyumar ngar sut. Ram tang komba chepar bat soni. Ta ter ta ure kontu chapar tar to tambo tani rang ke nga khuerna nyangje chik gomna tapa chik kedna ne sosu gomla warchin rob jagya. Nilu kungani nyamjik shed matapa. Garder nilu kungang nyamjik shina jamba tamchet khar matapa na li tang pe ni kap tani fyong gure ezer. Oh, ti ni kabla tani jamba tamchet jik ni tambo tani nilu la nyamjik shini dershik nyambo gomni rang tang komba chek parambat soni nilu kungang la rang ap sub jik ni zob chu tang gagdub kang am shet par rang ke sem kir nilu ngo hi opa ti ngang to tam nyamjik shini jik ko kre ezer ngo hi mao na rang jik dung na jigni yin kre tem ka ke yo mar tai kirang zu ha ko kre chik thang na jigni yin ka mar lo ma tan yin kre ho testa wu teni tani chig rang sosu tani semla kharni kansam chigla nuba yakpo chigya leb yung kres sar cha dang tang cha dang tani tambo ti chi yung jigna tani shinan rikhandu songre the jut kanang la yang songre songre khongru tani jik kanang la yang ngak jidde tham chik ni kam na yang li tang pa nam ki te chirta yin de choni zong juk shet ma thap na diri shinan rig songre songre o diri re.
So, for example, there are some who may have a glimpse or recognition of Buddha nature. But then, if compassion arises, or if faith arises, then it becomes an obstacle to the ongoing recognition of that Buddha nature. It prevents them from recognizing. And so for beginners, if they're unable to rest in the ongoing recognition of the natural state, when anything else is arising, or when engaging in any of the other referential merit practices and so forth, then it's appropriate to take a time where they lay aside all of the other practices and simply focus only on resting in the meditative equipoise of the natural state and meditating on Buddha nature. And so then for some, it's necessary to do this, because for as long as the other referential things are arising, they're unable to cultivate a stability in the recognition of true nature. Now, resting still doesn't necessarily mean one is resting in recognition of true nature. It's very possible that that meditation is just shamatha. But making the assumption that there is recognition taking place, then one would focus on that as their main practice, and eventually stability in that would grow, and there's enough clarity and stability in that then other things can be done at the same time, other practices and trainings. And until then, alternating in this way is appropriate, because most beginners to this practice are not able to immediately incorporate or unify the two accumulations. Also?
오야 데니 캐랑 순답 삼 그랬다. 오나 때타우 타와 잠모 Dzogchen 그냠란다 마키나 델리 잠바치 곰땅 요르웨 삼나 디밍메킨 밍메크 냠란데 때메나 강삼치랑 이पर 요고레 리 타오파 남란 더 메나야 드크요레 옛나야 온테니 다 근데 회나 나투 하르스타 나오진 거 돈이 릭피고니 딱상 샤밥시니 추담 기르니룩 돈이 dim바 하고니 던다오 옛나 나투 똑치기 이르와 똑치기고니 삼로 땅게 요레 다 옛나 똑치기 히럽 잠모 질라 끼니 삼숑 그 히럽 그 론독 챗니 투비 히럽기 츠기 론독 챗 삼숑 그 히럽기 돈기 론독 챗니 츠당 돈기 차 돈이 돈비종 담치 하고니 다 돈이 또 역보치 고소나 테니 팅어라 곰 잡난 데기요레 텔라 테니 영 팅어라 회나 가투 냠는 가립시나 돈이 그어라 비익진도 리타오 파남키 영곰 잡탑고요 말 Shirtang Gumi ni kamni shapi toni di nyang tab gayo mar. Ti shirna yang dertabu yenna yang rejik tani ndushi ge gewa teto jekni. Tani langtong gom. Ta langtong gom bi ni kamna tawngoma kyamdo tang semkit tani murji korang kanyam lam shina tere. Jugla ngowar mon lamte tamba namsam chatsangla yogre. Authentically, no so nyamnante, mingmek nyamnante psina dekere, when a tony gumni, nipatan chipi goni, tan la papne, the knitting out of jek, gum jap, yun ton, chang mawoshi, gum jap, namangi caranto, harsut of shapenicam, saro shadio, there start to gum jab nayan decure. Ona young kaki te on higmare. Ona terta utonia martok nayan, Waited to Mamyong Kanina, the Martona Karche Gure Zena, that Tedina, Chudam Jimata Malam Tau Yimber, Jankure. Tony de Marto, Dzogchen Machinayang, Chudam where na way go in some lotan, Melon Uncle Zungin Tau, Malam Tau, then each of the Dazu Carvatau, Net Kumni, Way Mambola, Tani, Dirtau Re, Samni, Look. Now tamche the Jumada Malam Tower Epsa. Niba kes on the pay for a Juma Malam Tawla. Oh, then Jimmy Web get last of what tamche left tinny. Way go near Tokroya Yori, Jumada Malam Taw Hakwa Yori. O tete ni chutamche Jumada Malam Tower Epsamni. Tela Nyamnan Shini, Teni Nyam or Tenishini Tekum Nayan Duki or Ese. That tetani. 다 럼박 마몬라오테 대냠는지 럼밤 정 잠보테 돈이고 럼밤 톰보테 다 Dzogchen 고미야테 데레스
if you ask the question, if one is not yet at the level of realizing or being able to recognize the profound view of Dzogchen, then is there other ways to do non-referential wisdom practice? For sure. Prior to being able to have that direct recognition, and then there are trainings in the Madhyamika or middle way approach, such as the Heart Sutra, in which one has understanding of emptiness. And in those approaches, those are reached through analysis, through taking reasoning and investigating the nature of phenomena to see that it is emptiness. And then gradually cutting through one's doubts and misunderstandings and so forth. And then one realizes both the meaning of the words themselves and their meaning, and understands emptiness. And so when we reach that certainty in emptiness, then we can rest there, and that would be the non-referential accumulation of non-referential wisdom. And so then one could do that if they had had instructions on Madhyamika or on the Heart Sutra, and for a time focus on that non-referential accumulation of non-referential wisdom, maybe occasionally laying aside the other composite virtuous practices and activities and focusing primarily on vipassana, profound insight meditation. Still, even when we do the profound meditations such as these, where we're meditating on the views that are realizing to varying degrees the true nature of phenomena, we still want to have the three excellencies in place. Our excellent beginning, in which we go for refuge and generate bodhicitta. And then you have your excellent main part, which would be like your contemplation of Madhyamika or emptiness. And then you have your conclusion. But the primary focus, where you lay aside any other activity, would be during the main part, the non-referential main part, in which you're meditating on that certainty of empty nature. And you apply, of course, all the key points of meditation that you've learned, short periods of concentration many times and so forth. And many of you have had instructions on the Heart Sutra from previous teachings I've given. And then you might ask, well, if one doesn't yet have the tools, hasn't received the necessary teachings to understand emptiness and to reach a conclusive, decisive understanding of that, do they still have an opportunity to practice the non-referential accumulation of wisdom? And so, yes, there's another possibility, which is in which one trains in seeing how all phenomena are like dreams and illusions. And so we may not have yet cultivated enough knowledge to understand emptiness. We may not have yet reached the experience of the direct recognition of Dzogchen, but using analogies like the reflection of a form on the surface of a mirror, or the reflection of the moon and stars on the water. And there are 8 analogies of illusoriness, in which we see that all phenomena are no more real than a dream, than an illusion. We can use those analogies and the insights in which we see that they're dreamlike and illusory. And when we have some insight into their dreamlike, illusory nature, then allow our mind to rest there. And that would also suffice as the accumulation of non-referential wisdom. And so there are sort of levels. There's the kind of fundamental base level would be at least being able to recognize that phenomena are like a dream or an illusion. The second kind of middling level would be able to know directly and have confidence in their empty nature. And the third, the highest, is recognition, direct recognition of true nature, as spoken of in the Dzogchen approach. That's all. And all of those would be considered non-referential accumulations.
tere teni ndete yagi lalla zongjuk mahipi kyun fiasonga kanzag namchi zongjuk mahipi nyamnen kyunchen chip fiasonga te tang deni kan ragmarta kare zinan dir ni kapso mikchip sonum ko tsot karchembo yamba hakog yore teni hakog yore ta yenna양 teni mikchip sonum ko tsok yegpo chik tsoni zongjuk tunrowa 냠는 예뻐 지금 종을 샤비 쳇도 담보 드니 니룩라 담보 곰니 데라 곰바티지 곰차티지 숑송나 데니 촉삭 발라더니 죽니 갈레갈레시니 촉니 종죽든 로타베치 용그레 제키오레 따티돈 단데니 조샤야테 테디시니 고고키오레 테레 데니
So, before, if you recall, the first statement was pointing out the flaw of practitioners not knowing how to unify the two accumulations. And those two flaws were mentioned above. And then here it's saying for new practitioners, they should temporarily lay aside the focus on the referential merit, the accumulation of referential merit. But the difference is key. A practitioner in this case understands the importance of both accumulations and appreciates the value of the accumulation of non-referential merit. However, they also understand that they're not yet capable of practicing both accumulations simultaneously, and that they need to alternate. And so to take, for example, time in which they lay aside the merit that is the referential accumulation of merit, in which they focus only on non-referential accumulation of wisdom. And that they need to have that space in order to cultivate that and gain familiarity in that, and then later that they'll unify the two accumulations. And so there's a great difference between the two. Masa?
노야 되니 단단히 뉴마 카인 리퀴 tanton se chulabjin to nawi temango 대체랑 나로 위견 가나로 위견이 또 계속 잠서 바빠 메퍼 족 대심 철록라서 집전 경사무 공비나라 집은 종송도 되니 디 가레 체크오레제나네 다 강참 직라 대타우 민메기 돈라 곰송나네 되니 가립숑 그래 제나네 가리 카르나 가리 나나 베 답데오지 카르공 그래서 곰니 가립시나 탐체트 쪽순 차리용 그래서 노바 푸츠메 퍼마즈 쪽순 차리용 그래서 뜨제나 가르제 겨레제나 니루 궁앙도 냠지기 없이 요라 되니 개와 잠바 탐체디양 시 탐칸 언들이 나오지 용 그래서 When ngatu shirtang ko likat ma boyang tani rawa ngatu likat ma boyang tani re tambo re ni shina yang nyam chik to shit thok ko mena yang kansam kum sona kansam chila nyam chik to shit thok ko yorwa when lang kor guna yang ngatu tani re dwa tambo re ni kyang jang ni yakbo chi kor gu khore ma tom tambo kor jin to khala zab jin to khapar gyap jin to dawo chik rewa mandwa 옛날 강삼 직라 칼라 잡진도 등이 캐는 두 뎁쉿 그래 빼 약보르제기 오마타 텔라 템요랭이 하고요 칼라 잡진 카퍼 갭진 머잠바라 까찹샤진도 하고도가 다른 년진도 로톱거도가 네가 냠도 용톱거도가 랑코르코리아다 대 남진 신이네 더니 강삼 직라 대 약보직 더니 용톱야 요래 집이 돈된더니 마
So, at first we need familiarity in meditating in the non-referential state. And then it will be very easy once we're super familiarized with it to incorporate that with other meditations so that it can be a companion to and a support in any other meditation, any other practice that we do, any other positive actions and so forth. And so there's a point where the familiarity is so deep that then one is able to incorporate all the other trainings with no problem, where it's easy. It's kind of like when you first start to learn a car, to drive a car. You can't do everything at once. At first, and with many things it's like that. You have to start by, you learn one thing at a time, and then you can bring them all together once you're super familiar with them, and you can do them all at once. For example, like driving a car. And first you have to learn how to drive the car and all the different parts of the car. And eventually you're incorporating all of those aspects together. And then eventually you can eat food and maybe even talk on the phone. Rinpoche said, I'm not saying that's ideal or safe.
Don't do that, okay?
Don't do it. But technically, you can still drive while you're eating food and talking on the phone.
Even, one time somebody drove for me, and that time, that person drove the knees, with the knees and eating here. Today, I'm sure that person and these teachings. And the internet teaching, I know that, okay? Yeah, you did. I know you are laughing.
Oh, no.
Oh, Terry. Teni, Terry. Teni, Tanyuma can repeat Anton Churlavgendon. Demon Gokze, Tesekanano, Yanket, Gamson Papa Mepers. Oh, Terry. Kansam Chiglane. Tangoni, Teni, Nilugiapo Gumni. Shit to Pirni Captelane. Rugby Yunten Koran Rap Chigiam Gun to Kurtsavi Kabla, secure. Yati, the Yapochik. Sarvo tambo check norwa mepa yepo tambo dawoti di chatang tambo ta yo marta ot dawoti check no grace ti ni kaptela tani karre jena rang kare kharna ya sem kirni lu rugby glong la kare kharna kordi knawa kare kharna ya no pa mepa chik yong ayo re se kan ti ni kaptela na argento kharwa zere ti kabla no argento carvazena no bamepa tab devo yumpa tedi carvini captela gevi tsok haliba mampochik batson chimbo shid mergu panjuk tok yore zer zok dokre zere gevi when a ti kabla rangal hanyam nim sinanga nyembar ngak sakna ya da tsok sakna kari sina tani yakpo chingro thokayore zere kansam chigla o tere tip sherna tambo nilu ngom chot sarvi jila tani tambo nilu khorang komni ti tamba yakpa dawo thop soi jila tak zot tani chok sakpala ten jugna tani te choni zonjuk de chak thokayore zere ta ko soa tani nika nyam tu ro thoya dawo yong kayore zere 단데 역보 양로 역보 즉 공페르던로 소나 데이터부 즉 용 톱그레스 다른데 올라 다른 옵션 즉 요래 더 지마샤디오 드니도 톱그레스 회나 실당 글람냠 귤라 깨츠르 고안도 삼노 땅나 가츠 땅보 회나 캬암로 샘킷 지르니 학동 데니 응원로 데니 즉 로브중 그냠nen 데니 Kerim tang zorum la sokpa mambu nyamnem sheni khamik chi gitsok mambu sakni tep sakna ti tablap tenni jima ni luk tok par phek yore ni khoni gi nang ka tangbo njugul hasa ta kang rezena sok ni ki nang ka khamik chi sonom ko chokla njugul hamote tere nga chon juk bi ni kamlan juk li hawo yimba tang tani thamchet ki jungok te tere tani kansam chila ni luk zamo gilla ke charwi jila teni nilu kungala gomni tela teni nyamjik shini kantham chigla teni chok sakpala jugu kare so 어때 송표 고름 roluk tani
Eventually, as one meditates on the natural state, their capacity grows. And so slowly the qualities of that, the direct experience of that becomes more clear. And then they are more certain that it's not a mistake, that it actually is what it is, of their accuracy, of what they're recognizing, and a certain level of stability in awareness and the recognition of that begins to grow. And then at that time, then one will have this experience of the expanse of awareness of the natural state of the mind, in which then all of the appearances of samsara and nirvana can arise, but none of them affect it, none of them harm it. And that everything that appears and manifests simply arises as its ornament, as its ornamental display, and don't block it or stop it from happening, don't cause any harm to that ongoing recognition. And so there is a point in which the stability of a practitioner reaches that point, and at that point, then what happens is that the gathering of the accumulations of merit, of referential merit, of essentially virtue, begins to increase and expand for that practitioner. Like they can do it without hardship. It's not like difficult. There's a great enthusiasm for engaging in them. They don't have the kind of difficulties or problems and so forth that others have trying to get themselves to practice. And so then the accumulation of merit becomes easy for them, natural for them. And so then they do more accumulation of merit than before. More, for example, deity practice and mantra recitation and gathering the accumulations of merit and other positive activities. And so they engage in these even more than before. And so then in the beginning, there's at the initial stage of recognition, the two kind of feel separate from each other. But after recognition, if one gains stability, then eventually they'll reach the point where the two again merge, and there's the unity of the two accumulations in which they're both practiced together. And so that would be like the trajectory of someone who's following this advice here. And there's a little bit more, another kind of option that comes later. But typically, if we look at the kind of full spectrum, first, when a practitioner enters the path, they start with the referential accumulation of merit, going for refuge, generating bodhicitta, cultivating shamatha, cultivating vipassana, engaging in the ngondro practices and the mind trainings, and cultivating the generation stage and the completion stage practices. And so they engage in all of these methods, all of which are referential accumulation of merit. Then eventually that ripens their mind stream to a point where they're able to then begin to focus on practices, the non-referential wisdom practices. And so the typical trajectory of a practitioner is this way, where they start with all the accumulations of referential merit, and then eventually they reach a point where they're ready to really focus on the accumulation of non-referential wisdom, and then that becomes their primary focus for a period, and they might lay aside other trainings and so forth, practices and so forth, and focus solely on that. But then as that is developed, then they get to a point where then they're again their capacity grows so that they're able to do both the accumulations simultaneously. And then again, they begin to do even more of the accumulation of merit that is referential. So that's like the typical trajectory of a practitioner in this way. That's all.
대입시름 철록 라서 집전 정삽든 곰비나라 제pen 종송도가 뒤측 팀죽대라 뜻배 같이 거래. 단데레 대입시나 드니 종송나 드니 철록 라서 권남 초바 프로와 땅나 드니 회착 로야 땅나 대입신 또 시간서 꼬랍시 발라서 바 탐치 같이 쫀나요. 잡든 곰비나라 제pen 종송네 rong ke nyamlen ke mingmek ke nyamlen te kompet rob yakre rong ke sem ke chunye te kompet rob yakre piton te rong ke nyamlen te chexat rowa ta chezap roya te re kare dina migchi mingme nikar chigla parten certain mapshi nan dikyo mar sate sanyang ikyang to sha jong kare shini chogni la tengo ke dogzena te gemsan yore 속니 요구위 김선치요래 치킨 로톱 그메 빠래 믹지 코나게야 믹지 소놈 그쪽 코나게야 냠냄 신이 신아양 리우 톱톱 그요 말 믹메 예키 그쪽 코나 냠냄 신이구나 다르톱 리우 톱톱 그요 말 딥시난 참참랑 아투 냠는 쉿 맡음 닝각 로크요래 공페 푸tam메 빠 마잣 흥마랑라 냠는 요야 요파테나 Menduk Samian Dawo Chekdo in Yankayore. The Yongwe in Samsamla. Di Kabla Keranka, Soxak Depavjani, Tedi Shinan, Jamba Tamchela, Gomnan, Zapton Gombinamla Chepenjong, Sony, Pe Niluk Zamonyam Solembala, Pantok Yachimbono, lower to Compendro Yakare, Pitonde. When 나to ten bumis ze yora sapje ze. When sat tangwo to yo pipchang chup sen hwa tangwo nyamjik ko togni sat tangwo top ro kre. Nyamjik la dugni sat tangwo top ni deni kansam chigla yong ji top la dang ni ne chok sak de pabjang ru ma tok ko ma sak ni ba top top ko mare. Sat tangbu nyamlen konak togni deni yong ji top kni kap ko chok sak de pabjang na deni sak ni bi montok julake yong kyore. Deni shini soknika zonjuk shini no kyore. Te namje nga tuli tangwa ba nam ki kyang te tang chan rawan da wo shi top kyore. Otani res.
We're in the middle of the first paragraph on page 2. At that time, whatever appears is its own ornamental display.
No, te mar.
Ke tetse nawa role genni tu getsok.
Tevshim choluk la sok chip son kyang.
Teacher chuluk lasok.
Zaptun gombing nam la chepan jong map sha kyo bim jukre.
Wrong bab, wrong tongue, kompa chakpa bet mare.
What? Tese kang nang ro wi gyanyin to getok jam som ba pa me par jok tim jugla.
Okay.
Tevshim
At
choluk la
that
sok chip
time.
son zaptun gombing nam la chepan jong. Te so nyam trit shi nga tukwa.
Tetse role genni tu gewa so gem so be me par zok. Yeah, we're at what I read. At that time, whatever appears is its own ornamental display, in which the gathering of accumulations of positive actions is effortlessly completed without purposeful deliberation. So, eventually, beginning. Oh, at that time, right there. So if one gets to that point in the practice where their cultivation recognition is developed as such, then there's a point where then naturally the gathering of accumulations of actions is also effortlessly completed in that. And at that point, then it increased. In this case, no matter how much effort is placed on making offerings, studying, and so forth, then when one engages in deliberate, effortful actions of practices with the referential points, then it only increasingly benefits the emergence of the profound meditation. So when we look at the two accumulations, tomorrow we'll get into this in greater detail. Non-referential accumulation of wisdom and the referential accumulation of merit. We need both of them. You can't have one without the other. Like you can't just engage in the accumulation of merit without a reference point and reach the full and complete realization. You also can't only engage in non-referential wisdom and reach the full and complete liberation. And so both of these are necessary. One is not sufficient. And at first, it may seem like we have to put effort in each one exclusively. But eventually, then there'll come a point where each one is simply enhancing and enriching the other. And in fact, at any time in a practice, which, if we're focusing, for example, on the non-referential wisdom practices, if we get to a point where it's not increasing, where there isn't progress and there's no growth, then at that time, one needs to go out and engage in vast accumulations of merit and purification of obscurations and so forth. And what they'll find is that very quickly, then that realization increases and progresses. An example of this is even the bodhisattvas who have reached the levels of the bhumis, the levels of realization. For example, they reach the first level of realization, and they're resting in the meditative equipoise of that state. There's a certain point where they have to rise from that meditative equipoise. And if they want their realization to lead them into the second bhumi, the second level of realization, they have to gather accumulations and purify obscurations, or they won't attain the realization of the second bhumi. And so each of the bhumis are like that. Each of these levels of realization are such that you don't just rest in the wisdom. That for that wisdom, that realization to grow, to expand, to be as defined by the next level of realization, there's a point where they have to gather accumulations and purify obscurations. And so even at the levels of the bhumis, progression only happens when both are being combined, both of the accumulations. And so even for us as ordinary beings, not yet at the bhumis, we also are approximating how they practice in our practice here and now as well. Also? It's the end of the day.
Time.
So we have a dedication of merit, short.
Dorjen Changge Kombanyo Thank you. See you tomorrow.
Sa